Okay, so on this paper, I'm going to basically go through everything that you will need to know on this test as kind of one condensed form for your notes that you can use for the test. So, first thing we want to do is look at, is it in standard form? Is the problem already in standard form, where this would be ax squared plus bx plus c. So we need to have all of our terms on one side of the equation, where we have the x squared first, and then the x, and then the one that doesn't have x at all. So each of these examples are not in standard form, and we are going to have to put them in standard form before we can solve them any other way. In order to do that, we need to make sure all of the terms are on one side. So over here, I see that I have a 20 that is on kind of the opposite side as the other terms. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 20 in order to cancel that from this side. And that means I need to subtract 20 on the other side as well. However, neither of these terms are terms that I can subtract 20 from, because the negative 20 doesn't have an x, but these two terms both do. So this is just going to be 2x squared minus 6x, and then the minus 20 will go at the end, because it can't combine with any of the other terms. And on the other side, we will get 0. So now this is in standard form. We have 2x squared minus 6x minus 20 equals 0. And that is this problem up here that we will look at here in a second. Okay, so for the second example, we have 4x squared minus 10x plus 16 equals 12x minus 8. Again, I need to get the terms onto one side, so I'm going to subtract 12x in order to get rid of this 12x. And I do have something that I can subtract 12x from on the other side. I can do that over here. Negative 10x minus 12x would be negative 22x. I might also need to add 8 in order to get rid of this minus 8. And I can add 8 to 16, so that will give me 24. I've canceled everything out on the right side, so I have just 0 here. And I'll bring down this 4x squared, which gives me 4x squared minus 22x plus 24 equals 0, which is this problem that we will look at later. For the third example, we have x squared minus 3x minus 3 equals negative x squared minus 8x. So again, to move them to the side, I'm going to add add x squared, and then also add 8x in order to cancel these out. I can add x squared to the x squared over here, which will give me 2x squared. I can add 8x to the minus 3x, which will give me plus 5x. And let me see. That will let me bring down the minus 3. And I have canceled everything out on the right side, so now I should have equals 0 over there. And that is this problem over here that we will get to later. So all of these problems that we're doing right now, we will get to later. For this final example, we have 3x squared plus 6x minus 2 equals 6x plus 5. I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides in order to get rid of the 6x, which means I can subtract 6x over here. That will also cancel out. 6x minus 6x will also cancel out there. Then I have a plus 5 here. In order to get rid of that, I would do minus 5. So I'll do minus 5 on the other side as well. And this will give me 3x squared. Negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. So minus 7 equals 0. And that is this one over here. So once we have put these into standard form, made sure that they are in standard form, we need to determine, are we going to be factoring these, or are we going to be solving them with the quadratic formula? If we can factor them, so after we check, can we factor? If we can factor them, we need to first check, is there a greatest common factor? So if we look at this one, the 2x squared, the minus 6x, and the minus 20, these all have a 2 in common that we could take out. So I'm going to put a 2 in front of parentheses, divide each of these by 2. This would give me x squared. Negative 6x divided by 2 would give me negative 3x. And negative 20 divided by 2 would give me negative 10. So when I take out the greatest common factor of 2, I'm going to get x squared minus 3x minus 10, which is this one down here. For the second example under finding a greatest common factor, The 4x squared minus 22x plus 24, these also have a greatest common factor of 2. So I can also divide each of these by 2. And that will give me 2x squared minus 11x plus 12 equals 0, which is this one down here. So once we have taken out the greatest common factor, we can factor them using the x method or the x box method. We will use the x method if we have just x squared in front. So like this one, we have x squared minus 3x minus 10. Just x squared is our first term, so we can use just the x method, where the last number goes on top, so negative 10 goes on top. The middle number, negative 3, goes on bottom. We're looking for numbers that multiply to negative 10 and add to negative 3. So that would be negative 5 and 2. Gives me the factors x minus 5 and x plus 2 equals 0, which means that my values for x are going to be 5 and negative 2. But for the other one, when I took out this greatest common factor, we still had 2x squared as our first term. So we had a kind of a number in front of that x squared. We had 2x squared, not just x squared. So for this one, we would need the x and also the box. So since that's the case, we're going to take that 2, multiply it times the last number, 12, so 24 will be on top. The middle number, negative 11, still goes on bottom. The numbers that multiply to 24 and add to negative 11 would be negative 8 and negative 3. So we put the first term, 2x squared, in the first box. The last term, 12, in the last box. And then we use the negative 8 and the negative 3 to fill in the middle two boxes, negative 8x and negative 3x. Find what these have in common. 2x squared and negative 3x would have x in common. Negative 8x and 12 would have negative 4 in common. Again, it's negative because this one is negative. 2x squared and negative 8x would have 2x in common. And negative 3x and 12 would have negative 3 in common. And this one is negative because it's next to a negative. So we're going to have the factors x minus 4 and 2x minus 3 equals 0. For the x minus 4, this one will give me that x equals 4. For 2x minus 3, I'll solve that over here. 2x minus 3 equals 0. I would add 3, give me 2x equals 3. Divide by 2, and that'll give me x equals 3 halves. Looks like I didn't give myself enough room there. X is going to be equal to 3 halves. So x equals 4 and 3 halves for this problem. So that's how we solve them if we can factor them, either using the x or the x box method. If we can't factor them, then we need to factor them, or we need to solve them using the quadratic formula. In order to do that, we're first going to start by finding the discriminant. The discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So for this first example, a is going to be 2, b is 5, and c is negative 3. The discriminant would be 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. 5 squared is 25. Negative 4 times 2 times negative 3 would be 24. And 25 plus 24 is 49. So 49 is my discriminant. We're going to use that to put it into this quadratic formula. That what goes underneath the square root is the quadratic formula. So if I have the quadratic formula is negative b, I'd start with negative 5. And then plus or minus the square root of 49 divided by, which again, the discriminant goes underneath, so that's why this is 49, divided by 2 times a in this case is 2, so it would be 2 times 2. So this, I would just put it into my calculator, negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 49 divided by 2 times 2. And once you put those into your calculator, we should get that x is going to be equal to -3 and 0.5. Those are the two answers that we get when we put this into our calculator. -3 and 0.5. For the second one, we have 3x squared minus 7 equals 0. We are missing one of our terms. Normally we have ax squared plus bx plus c, but here we only have two terms. So I need to think about which one am I missing. Well, I'm missing the term that has just x. And normally we have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. I'm missing this bx term. So for this one, a will be 3, and this -7 is my c, but I'm missing a b term, so for this one, b will be 0. So then to find our discriminant, the b squared minus 4ac, if b is 0, then that will be 0 squared minus 4 times a is 3, and c is -7. 0 squared is 0. -4 times 3 times -7 would be 84, I believe. Yep, 84. 0 plus 84 is obviously 84. So then I need to put this into the quadratic formula, which is -b. So in this case, it would be -0 plus or minus the square root of our discriminant, which is going to be 84, divided by 2 times a, which a in this case is 3. So we're going to put that into our calculator. And once I put that into my calculator, I'm going to get that x is equal to 1.53 and -1.53. So these will be my two answers here. So these are all the different steps, all the different methods that we will need to use for this test to solve these quadratics, either by factoring or by using the quadratic formula. The key thing is going to be to make sure that they are put in standard form, and then check with which method you need to use in order to solve them.